Hi, my name is Tanner Sexton. Welcome to my broadcast. Today is December 14th, 2015. And today we are going to be talking about something called the SOE, alright, and something called the RAF. So let's start with the SOE. And what that is it stands for Special Operations Executive. That's where they got the SOE from. And their mission was to sabotage behind enemy lines. And what it kind of was a volunteer fighting force improvised to wage a secret war against Hitler's armies. And what they mean by sabotage is blowing up trains, bridges, and factories. So they were trying to add on to the war. And what was crazy about it was that back then women weren't in any type of wars. They were not allowed to do anything with weapons. So the SOE allowed the first time for women to actually become a part of war. And the women that were in it, they ranged from girls barely out of high school to mature mothers. And so they had all different types of age ranges in this. And what's crazy about them is they were the only women to bear arms in the entire war. So this is a new thing that these women got to do. And the force was founded in 1940 by the orders of Winston Churchill. And what Winston Churchill, kind of his explanation around it, about the SOE as a whole, he wanted to set Europe ablaze. That was his quote, kind of about the reason for the SOE. So, in April 1942, Winston Churchill gave his approval on sending female agents into Europe. So what happened here was that the SOE was founded in 1940 by the orders of Winston Churchill. And then in April 1942, Winston Churchill gave his approval on sending female agents into Europe. Alright, so ironically though, one of the first women was not even British. And that lady's name was Virginia Hall. And she was living in France when Germany invaded in 1940. Now, a crazy thing about it was that before war, pre-war, she had a hunting accident. And that made her have an artificial foot. Now, that's crazy enough that women are doing something in war. Now, this lady comes in, and she gets into the war and has an artificial foot. So I mean that's extraordinary for women's future that this happened. And she made her way to London, and despite being a citizen of a neutral country, she was recruited by the SOE. So even though she had the artificial foot, they still recruited her. So that kind of showed what kind of what kind of woman this was. And returning to London, Hall attached herself to the American equivalent of the SOE. So after she was done in Europe, she wasn't done. She became part of the American sort of SOE, which was called at the time the Office of Strategic Services. And with that that put her at war once again, with putting her ashore in France in 1944. So she started with Europe, but she ended with America. Now, there were 39 in all women of the SOE. And these women weren't crazy. They were normal, everyday citizens. Just like I said before, the people that were fighting as part of the SOE was a volunteer fighting force. So this was everyday women just wanting to do extraordinary things. Now, immediately after the war ended, the SOE was disbanded. So after the war, they cut it. Which was the reason why Virginia Hall, wanted to go to the America equivalent of the SOE. And when it was over, the women actually shunned the exposure of film and book and quietly got on with their lives. So that's crazy how all the courage and fight and what all they went through as a woman to even be the least bit part of the war. They were not selfish, and they did not want to be made upon this. They wanted to show they wanted people to see them as what they did, and they didn't want all these crazy things around them, about them, with film and book. They wanted to be known as the girls who just went out and did it and were completely unselfless about what they did. But what did kind of come out of it was the book called Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wynn. And this book is about a girl named Maddie. And what's crazy about Maddie is she is a woman ATA pilot in World War II. And the story shows her braveness and how she put her life on the line every time she flew. Now, what people don't really realize is just how crazy this is. What these women have to go through to fly these planes. I mean, every single time these women and Maddie get into the airplane and are about to fly, they know in the back of their heads that they not might make it on the ground again alive. That they know that they have, women in the SOE were lost on doing their job. They died for their country. So Maddie knew, which showed how brave Maddie was, that she was scared. And I think everybody that would have to do that would be scared. And what she did, I mean, I think that most men, what Maddie did, would be scared also. And it just like how Maddie was, the women of the SOE showed tremendous braveness every time they flew. And what I think is the true heroes of war were, I think it was the women that lost their life. I think this because they actually went out and they sacrificed their life for their country, for the cause of the war. And I also think I think these women did it because of the fact of women. I think the women who died doing this was all the women who died doing this did it for, I think, women in their because the present was totally changed after this, because women are completely more involved in war, as these heroes died for the cause of their country. All right, now let's talk about the RAF and what the RAF is. The RAF is the United Kingdom's Aerial Warfare Force. And this warfare force was formed toward the end of World War I in April 1918. And it is the oldest independent air force in the world. So this is just huge. This is the United Kingdom's just strong power and will. It has so much good history for the United Kingdom, and all the battles they were a part of shape the United Kingdom's history as a country. And following the victory of the Central Powers in 1918, the RAF emerged as, at the time, the largest air force in the entire world. So it's crazy to think about what the United Kingdom had on their hands, with the entire world looking at them as being the biggest, the strongest air force country in the world. That's huge for a country. And what the RAF did was they developed the doctrine of strategic bombing, which led to the construction of long-range bombers and became its main bombing strategy in the Second World War. So what they did, I mean, they were just geniuses. And with that, they could see what the enemy was giving them, and they could strategize a way in what they would do to make them win. And with how they constructed the long-range bombers, and it just became the main bombing strategy in the Second World War, that made so much difference in the Second World War, as they were so much more advanced than other countries in the Second World War. And with being